audience.
Starting now, 36% of the people in this room and the people they know no longer have the same rights as everyone else. We're going to make this decision based on something we feel is different about those people. I realize that doesn't seem right, and it isn't. But that's what's happening right now to 36% of our population. They experience racism on a daily basis. According to Population of the United States by Race and Hispanic and Latino Origin by infoplease.com 2016, in our recent 2014 census, there were 309 million people in America. 112 of those were not white. Those are the ones that are directly targeted by racists. Colin Kaepernick is a professional football player. He and many of his teammates have recently started to protest against racism by sitting or otherwise silently protesting during the pregame performance of our national anthem. I am here today as a concerned citizen, a potential victim of racism myself, and a relative of Africans, asking you for your help. We can stop racism. We just need to take this first step by joining Colin Kaepernick, his teammates, all the people oppressed, and those who face racism by participating in these anthem protests. So let's begin by talking about where the problem is and how it got started. Racism affects more than just those people who live in inner cities. A study conducted by Baker and colleagues in 2016 found that even though some people believe racism doesn't directly affect them, and that it is primarily a problem in urban areas, there is overwhelming evidence that suggests that rural, middle, and high school students witness racism and employ strategies to appear non-racist. Just by witnessing racism, their behavior is changing. And described in Social Psychology by Stephen Francois in 2012, there are two types of prejudice: explicit and implicit. Explicit prejudice are those that we're aware of. So if you were bitten by a dog as a child and you grow up to fear dogs, you're aware of this prejudice and you know where it comes from, so you try to stay away from dogs. Implicit prejudice we are not aware of. If you're afraid of dogs now and you weren't bitten by one, or you can't explain where this fear came from, that is an implicit bias. So you still act a certain way towards the animal even though you're not sure why you do. People who don't think they're racist but who have witnessed racist acts may behave different around other races simply because they've developed these implicit prejudices. Racism exists in everyone who is directly affected, as well as those who have simply witnessed it. Now let's talk about how anthem protests can stop racism. According to Players Who Protest the National Anthem Should Quit National Teams by Scalia 2016, some people think that athletes should stop protesting or otherwise should stop being professional athletes. I'm telling you that while in addition to that, other non-athletes think that by getting involved it's really not going to help, that their efforts are not going to be effective in stopping the racism. But protesting is a controversial topic no matter what people are protesting. But peaceful protests are legal and constitutional. And if they stop the protesting, then the people without a voice aren't able to get their message out there to say that they want the racism to stop, they want the oppression to stop. So the professional athletes are giving a voice to those who otherwise can't speak up for themselves. And while some people think that their efforts will not be effective, there is a phenomenon called minority influence, again in Social Psychology by Stephen Francois, 2012, minority influence is the process by which dissenters produce change in a group. This means that a minority group can have an effect on the majority group, and here's how. So first, there's strength in numbers. So if enough people, even in the minority, speak up in more numbers against the majority, so you have 100 members of the minority speaking to 50 members of the majority, they may be able to sway those 50 members of the majority who can go back to the rest of the majority and continue to spread this message. People typically adopt the majority view as a way of fitting in. So even though you may not necessarily believe everything the majority is saying, you tend to go along with it because you want to be part of that group. By being persistent and consistent, the majority will start to listen to the minority because they will believe that their message is important and they believe it to be true. If the majority view is changed, it will be more resistant to future change. This means that if the majority view on racism can be changed to embrace equality, then it will be more difficult to change this view in the future, and racism may be gone forever. Because of this potential, we must attempt to make this change by joining in the protests. So let's dig a little deeper into why everyone should get involved. Some people think that these are only black people issues or Hispanic people issues or someone else who's being affected by racism, and it's not really their problem. But according to the census in 2014, there are only 6 racial groups. One of them is labeled 2 or more races, which contains 57 combinations. 9 million people reported a mixed race in 2014. Chances are you, your friends, your family, your co-workers, someone you know is close to many of these people. So the issue here is affecting the people that are closest to all of us. Additionally, 27 years from now, there will no longer be a majority race in America. That we will enter a minority majority, according to, in 2015, Colby and Ortman wrote in Projections of the Size and Composition of the U.S. Population 2014 to 2060, that in the year 2044, we will enter a majority-minority situation. This is because non-Hispanic whites population is decreasing, while all other populations are increasing. At that time, the former minority groups could join together and reverse the oppression that they've been facing. And one final thought. Racism doesn't really make sense when you consider the fact that all humans have African DNA. 130,000 years ago, the first humans left Africa and populated the rest of the world. So we are all African. This is documented in Modern Humans Came Out of Africa, Definitive Study Says, by Owen, 2007. So if we have prejudicial and racial feelings about a certain group based on their race, we're actually persecuting those who are technically genetically related to us. So as you can see, doing nothing, we are allowing our friends and family to continue to face racism. Racism and oppression are a major problem in this country. At least 36% of our citizens are dealing with this daily. As I've shown, this is not just an inner city problem, but it affects anyone, not only those who are affected directly by racism, but those who witness it on a daily basis, or who have seen it happen. They end up developing internal prejudices. You now know that beginning today, we can influence the majority with our minority influence. We talked about how there soon will not be a majority in this country, and that racism may be reversed. And you just found out that we're all related to Africans in some way. So again, as a concerned citizen with implicit prejudice and African DNA, I ask you to please join me, Colin Kaepernick, and all those affected by racism in Anthem protest. Racism ends today, and equality begins right now.